picture this scene for a second. It's late evening. You've been out in the world dealing with the noise, the pressure, the absolute grind of the machine. Maybe you're on a construction site, physically laying the foundation, your muscles aching, dust in your lungs. Or, maybe you're in a boardroom navigating the sharks, playing 4D chess just to keep your team employed.
Right? Or writing the code that keeps the whole digital infrastructure afloat, just staring at a screen until your eyes burn.
Exactly. You've spent every ounce of your energy laying the bricks of civilization. You've built the literal and metaphorical roof over your family's head.
It's that universal male experience, isn't it? That expenditure of energy, the output, the feeling that you've just emptied the tank completely for the benefit of others.
Yeah, that is the core feeling right there. So you turn the key in the lock of your front door. Your body is screaming for just one thing, and that is rest. You walk in, you sit down on the sofa, the one you paid for, right, in the house you pay the mortgage on, and you let out a breath. You close your eyes for 5 seconds, and then the atmosphere drops.
Oh, it is palpable. That shift in air pressure, it isn't a weather front, it's a psychic front.
It's heavy. You feel it in your gut. You haven't done anything wrong. You haven't even said a word yet. You've actually done everything right today. You provided, you protected, you endured. But the moment you stop moving, the moment you seek that fleeting second of tranquility, you become the enemy. The war begins.
That imagery, that specific scenario, opens the book we're covering today. And if that scene made your stomach tighten because it felt a little too familiar, then you are exactly where you need to be. That specific tension, that confusion, is the starting point for everything we're about to unpack.
Today, we're doing an exclusive deep dive into a book that puts a name to that feeling and explains exactly why it happens. It's titled Tooth and Claw: Men Must Produce, Sacrifice, and Fight by Conrad Riker. And before we go any further into the text, I have a really specific request for you listening right now. If you want us to keep uncovering these hard truths, if you want to support a show that isn't afraid to look into the dark corners of the modern male experience, I need you to hit that like and subscribe button right now.
Yeah, it helps the algorithm find us, which, as we'll learn today from the book, is part of the very machine Riker is critiquing. The algorithm favors silence on these topics, so your engagement is actually a form of resistance.
Precisely. Now, Tooth and Claw. This isn't just a book, is it? Riker actually calls it a declaration of total war. It's presented as a manual for survival. And I want to be crystal clear right off the bat, we're going to go incredibly deep today. We're talking about a long, intense analysis, but we can only scratch the surface of the red pill truth contained in these pages.
Right, we're just giving you the map, not the whole territory.
Exactly. So, if what we discuss resonates with you today, I want you to go to Amazon Kindle or Google Play Books immediately and buy your own copy. You are going to want this text in your arsenal.
This deep dive is really designed for the man who senses the knife in his back. That's Riker's target audience. We're speaking to the men who have woken up, or who are just beginning to wake up, to the reality of the manosphere. Riker isn't writing for the guy who wants to, watch a sitcom where the dad is a bumbling idiot and just laugh along. He's writing for the man who is dead tired of being gaslit by that culture.
We represent the counter-narrative here. We're going to impartially trace the history of our institutions that Riker lays out, how they started, and how, according to the book, they were captured by feminists and Marxists. We're going to decode the biological programming that makes your home life feel like a battlefield, and we're going to map out the exit strategy, something Riker calls the New Jerusalem. So buckle up. This is going to be intense.
Let's start with the diagnosis. Riker identifies a central concept that explains that opening scene, the man on the couch. He calls it the provider's paradox.
The provider's paradox. Okay, let's unpack this. Because on the surface, providing for a family or a society sounds like a genuinely noble thing. It's what men have done for millennia, the basis of the social contract. So why does the book frame it as a paradox?
Because, according to Riker, the contract has been voided. Civilization was built by men who believed that their sacrifice would purchase something specific. Gratitude, legacy, family continuity. It was a transaction. I give my labor, my risk, my life, and you give me respect, loyalty, and a peaceful home. But in the modern era, the sacrifice remains mandatory. You must produce. You must pay the bills. But the benefits have been reclassified as oppression.
That is a heavy hit. So you're still expected to pay the bills and fix the roof, but you're an oppressor for having the capacity to do it.
Worse, Riker argues you're an oppressor because you are doing it. Your ability to provide is seen as evidence of your unearned power. Riker introduces a really fascinating bit of logic here called the syllogism of the sleeper. It explains why that man sitting on the couch is such a massive trigger.
The syllogism of the sleeper. I love the philosophical terminology he uses there. It elevates the discussion from just complaining to actual analysis. Break that down for us.
So it goes like this. A syllogism is a logical argument. Major premise. Human females evolved to evaluate men through testing behaviors to ensure provisioning and protection. They are constantly scanning. Is he useful? Is he strong? Can he save me?
Right. That's the evolutionary imperative.
Yeah.
Because if he can't save her in a primal environment, she dies.
Correct. Then we have the minor premise. A man at rest, content, and unthreatened cannot be productively worked or evaluated. He's static. He's basically in power-saving mode.
He's offline.
Exactly, which leads to the conclusion. Therefore, a man at rest represents a biological emergency.
A biological emergency. That's such a dramatic way to put it, but it makes total sense biologically.
Yeah.
So him relaxing signals to her ancient brain that he's not working, he's not alert, and therefore they are fundamentally unsafe.
That's the core of it. But in the modern context, there is no saber-toothed tiger outside. The roof is completely secure. The bills are paid on autopay. But the instinct remains. The software hasn't been updated, so the emergency must be resolved. How do you wake the sleeper? Through henpecking, through criticism, through the generation of synthetic drama.
Synthetic drama. That is the perfect term for it. Drama that is manufactured out of thin air just to get reaction.
If he isn't fighting a bear, she will become the bear to ensure he is still capable of fighting. She needs to see him active to feel safe.
That is just exhausting to even think about. It's the logic of the leisure apocalypse. You can't negotiate with it because it isn't rational. It's hardware.
And this scales up too. This isn't just about your wife getting mad that you're napping on a Sunday. This is where it gets really interesting economically in the book. Riker talks about the extraction engine. He argues that the patriarchy, which feminists claim is this tyrannical system of oppression, was actually the only economic structure capable of paying the bills of civilization.
Right, because he brings up the data. And the data he presents is pretty brutal.
It is. He cites Bureau of Labor Statistics and IRS data to make his case. The reality he outlines is that men are net positive tax contributors. If you look at the lifetime of an average man, he pays significantly more into the system than he takes out.
And women, according to this data.
Women, as a demographic cohort, he notes, are net negative beneficiaries of state transfer payments. They receive more in welfare, healthcare subsidies, and social programs than they actually contribute in taxes.
So generally speaking, the book is saying men pay into the pot and women take out of the pot.
In terms of the aggregate tax data Riker presents, yes. The welfare state, the healthcare subsidies, the social safety nets, these are essentially funded by the excess labor of the very men that the culture demonizes. The patriarchy is the bill payer. Riker actually calls this the men Kampf narrative.
That is an incredibly provocative term. Men Kampf. He's clearly trying to stir the pot with that one.
It's extremely provocative, and he uses it deliberately. He analyzes it as a system of collective guilt that is weaponized to strip men of assets and dignity. It's a mechanism where you blame a group for all the world's ills to justify taking their resources.
It's like the ultimate gaslight. You work 60 hours a week, you pay the taxes that fund the programs, and then you're told you have privilege and need to step aside.
Riker calls that the apex fallacy.
Yes, the apex fallacy. This one really clicked for me when going through the source material. Explain that one for the listeners.
It's the error of looking at the top 0.01% of men, the CEOs, the billionaires, the presidents, and assuming that all men share that power and ease. The book argues that feminists look at someone like Elon Musk and say, see, men have all the money and power. But Riker points out the reality for the average man. Men are taxed more because they work more hours, they take more dangerous jobs, they sacrifice more.
They die sooner. They make up the vast majority of the homeless population. They make up the majority of workplace fatalities.
Correct. But this sacrifice is twisted into a narrative of privilege. So the provider is trapped in a paradox. The more you provide, the more you are resented. The more you build, the more you are told you stole.
And that leads us directly into the personal sphere. Because if the society is ungrateful, you might at least hope your home is a sanctuary. But Riker says no, it is not a sanctuary. It is a testing ground.
We have to talk about the shit test.
We do. And Riker is very clear here. It isn't a glitch in the Matrix. It is hardware.
Right. Most men think a shit test where a woman starts an argument or belittles him for seemingly no reason is a communication failure. They think, oh, if I just explain my feelings or if I actively listen to her feelings, we can fix this and get back to peace. Riker says that is a fatal error.
He uses the story of Sarah and Michael to illustrate this, and man, It is rough to read.
It's a tragedy, but Riker frames it as a very common one. Michael is an engineer, loses his job after 12 years of loyal service to his company. He comes home, totally vulnerable, and tells his wife, Sarah, he's looking for support.
He's looking for a teammate. He's looking for his partner to step up and say, we got this. We can handle this together.
Instead, within 18 hours, less than a single day, Sarah starts talking about her sister's husband who just got a promotion. She mentions his new company car. She wonders aloud what kind of man gets recognized like that.
That is just ice cold. Michael just lost his livelihood, and she is comparing him to the brother-in-law.
It's a probe. She is checking his structural integrity. And what does Michael do? He collapses. He gets emotional. He tries to appeal to her empathy. He says, how can you say that right now? I'm hurting.
And that's the end of it, isn't it?
It is. Riker notes that tears and vulnerability from a man are not connection. They are blood in the water. Within 6 months, Sarah is cheating on him with a sales manager. Why? Because Michael failed the test. He showed he couldn't hold frame.
It sounds incredibly cruel, though. I mean, surely we've evolved past that. Surely modern love is about vulnerability.
That's the thing. Riker argues we haven't evolved past it at all because survival is still the prime directive of our biology. He brings in anthropological evidence to show this isn't just modern Western women being mean. This is deep evolutionary code.
He talks about the Kung women. Right, let's get into that.
Yes, the Kung Bushmen. When a hunter comes back with a big kill, the women don't praise him, they mock him. They criticize the meat. They tell him it's barely enough to feed a single flea. Why? To test if he will get angry and violent or if he can maintain his composure. They are probing for weakness. They are cooling his heart to make sure he doesn't become a tyrant, but fundamentally also to see if he is emotionally stable under pressure.
And the Ayaka Pygmies. That example completely blew my mind.
That one is even more direct. The text explains that the Ayaka wives will deliberately manufacture chaos start fights, create intense drama right before the men are supposed to go out on a dangerous hunt.
That seems totally counterproductive. If I'm going to hunt a dangerous animal, I need my head in the game, not worrying about an argument at home.
But look at it through game theory, as Riker does. In an ancestral environment, a weak man meant death for the family. If a man can be rattled by his wife's words, he will definitely be rattled by a lion or a rival tribe. She needs to know before he leaves the village if he is strong enough to survive.
So she stresses him out on purpose to see if he breaks.
Precisely. It is a biological stress test. The problem, as we mentioned earlier, is the modern mismatch. Your nervous system can't distinguish between a saber-toothed tiger and a bad performance review. And her nervous system can't distinguish between an impending tribal raid and you forgetting to do the dishes. The probe launches regardless of the context.
So when you're dealing with this shit test, Riker says you have to realize it's a status probe. It has a 60,000-year history. You cannot negotiate with it.
You have to pass it. And you pass it by holding frame. Not by crying, not by explaining your stress, and certainly not by apologizing for her bad mood. You demonstrate that her chaos does not affect your internal state.
This brings us to the broader picture. If this is the biological baseline, how did we get to a point where our entire society seems structured to deny this reality? Riker calls this the architecture of lies.
This is where we get into the institutional capture. How do the universities, the media, the HR departments all end up singing from the exact same hymn sheet? Riker points to epistemological warfare.
Epistemological warfare. That's a $5 word right there. What does it mean in plain English for the guys listening?
It's a war over how we know what is actually true. Riker attacks standpoint epistemology. This is the idea that feelings equal facts, that your lived experience, specifically if you are a designated victim group, is more valid than objective, measurable data.
Ah, the old my truth versus the truth debate.
Exactly. The book argues that if a woman feels unsafe, then you are, by definition, a threat. The objective reality of whether you actually did anything threatening is completely irrelevant. Her feeling constitutes the reality.
And he talks about the Mott and Bailey tactic. I see this everywhere once I read about it in the book.
It's a medieval siege tactic applied to modern debate. The Mott is a highly defensible, reasonable position. Something like men and women should receive equal pay for equal work. Nobody disagrees with that.
Right, that sounds totally fair. Who would argue against that?
Yeah, but that isn't where the activists live. They live in the Bailey, the radical territory. The Bailey is any difference in outcome is absolute proof of systemic sexism and requires massive wealth redistribution.
So when you attack the radical idea of the Bailey, they retreat to the Mott and say, whoa, don't you believe in equal pay?
Exactly. They use the reasonable claim to defend the radical one. Riker rips this apart using the CONSAD report. This was a Department of Labor study that proved the wage gap is almost entirely based on choices, hours worked, taking dangerous jobs, career interruptions. But Riker points out that activists ignore the data because they are operating on standpoint epistemology. Facts don't matter to them. The narrative matters.
And this narrative creates what Riker calls the gynocentric gulag, a prison where men are simply utility drones.
And nowhere is this more evident than in the Duluth model.
This is the domestic violence policy. Yeah.
Yes, it's a policy framework used by police departments across the West. Riker explains that it explicitly assumes a male perpetrator, female victim dynamic, regardless of the actual evidence at the scene.
So even if she attacks him, if the cops show up, he is the one likely going away in handcuffs.
Riker mentions Erin Peatsy here to illustrate the point. She founded the first women's shelter in the UK. She started noticing that a lot of the women coming in were just as violent as the men they left. She said violence is often reciprocal.
And what happened to her for pointing that out?
She was exiled. She received death threats. She had to leave the movement she founded because she dared to say that women can be violent too. That is the gynocentric gulag in action. It aggressively punishes truth tellers.
It isn't just in the courts, though. It's in the schools. It's in the broader culture. Riker talks about this shift from logos, reason, and order to emotional validation.
It's what he terms the war on joy. Have you noticed how male hobbies are treated in mainstream culture?
Oh, absolutely. If a guy wants to play golf or play video games or go fishing on a Saturday, it's treated like a crime against the family. It's framed as neglect.
Riker analyzes this economically. He says male recovery time is demonized as neglecting the family. Why? Because if you are resting or enjoying yourself, you are not producing resources for extraction. You are considered unused capacity.
That is chilling. So my Saturday morning golf game isn't just annoying to her, it's viewed subconsciously as a loss of revenue.
In the extraction engine, yes. And this is why Riker provides tactical advice on how to handle these arguments. He calls it the rhetorical kill shot.
I love a good practical tip. What is the rhetorical kill shot?
It's for when you're hate with the "I feel unsafe" or "I feel like you're being aggressive" line, when you are just stating calm facts. The protocol is to look them in the eye and say, your feelings about reality do not constitute reality itself.
Your feelings about reality do not constitute reality itself. Man, you have to be ready to stand your ground to drop a line like that.
You do. But Riker argues that if you validate the premise that her feelings dictate objective truth, you have already lost the argument. You have to return to logos. You have to return to reason.
Okay, so we've diagnosed the problem here. We understand the biology. We see the institutional trap. The big question is, what do we do about it? Riker says there are two paths for the modern man. The pet or the wolf.
This is the core of what he calls the strategic withdrawal.
Let's define the pet first, because this is the guy we see everywhere.
The pet is the domesticated husband, the tax slave. He lives in a state of constant fear. He's terrified of his wife, terrified of HR, terrified of the family court meat grinder. He thinks if he just behaves, if he's a good boy and does all chores, he will be safe.
But he isn't safe.
No, he can be discarded at any moment. Riker contrasts this with the wolf. The wolf is the sovereign individual. He refuses the bad contract entirely.
And this leads to the concept of the capital strike. This is straight out of Atlas Shrugged, isn't it? Going gulp.
It is deeply influenced by that. The idea is simple. Stop feeding the beast. If the system uses your resources to demonize you, stop giving it resources.
How does one do that practically? Riker gets into some very specific strategies here, particularly about money.
He emphasizes Bitcoin and crypto. Now, he makes it clear this isn't just investment advice, it's political philosophy. Why does he like Bitcoin?
Because it's hard to seize.
It is the only money that cannot be inflated away by the state, which acts as a hidden tax. And crucially, if the keys are secured properly, it is very difficult for a divorce court to seize. Riker calls this cryptographic sovereignty.
That is a powerful concept. Financial assets that exist outside the reach of the Duluth model courts.
Exactly. And then there is location arbitrage. This is for the wolf who realizes that geography is not destiny.
This is the idea of moving to places like Southeast Asia or Eastern Europe.
Yes. Riker argues that in these jurisdictions, family law is often based more on traditional logic and less on what he calls feminist emotionalism.
Plus, the cost of living difference allows for the ghost strategy.
Right. Earning income that is hard to trace, hard to tax. Starving the welfare state. If you can live like an absolute king on $2,000 a month in Thailand, you don't need to grind for $10,000 a month in New York, where $5,000 of it goes straight to taxes and rent. You remove your shoulder from the wheel of the civilization that hates you.
That is the ultimate rebellion, just
Yeah.
walking away. But for those who stay, or for those building this new life abroad, Riker talks about the internal game, the psychology of it. He calls it building the fortress.
The internal fortress is key. You can have all the Bitcoin in the world, but if you are psychologically addicted to female validation, you are still a slave.
He suggests a 90-day detox. This sounds incredibly intense.
It is necessary, according to the book. The advice is straightforward. For 3 months, make 0 decisions based on female approval. None. You wear what you want, eat what you want, do what you want with your time.
That sounds like it would cause a massive amount of friction in a relationship.
It will, but Riker says you have to break the neurochemical addiction to validation. Most men are dopamine addicts, and the drug is a woman's smile or approval. You have to detox.
He mentions amused mastery as the goal state after this detox.
Amused mastery is looking at the chaos, the shit tests, the drama, and not getting sucked in. You view it like a parent viewing a toddler's tantrum. You don't get angry, you don't cry. You are amused. You are the master of your own emotional state.
He also brings up a historical model for this, the Knights Templar.
This is a really fascinating historical parallel he draws. The Templars were warrior monks. They became incredibly powerful and wealthy. Why? Because they withdrew from female validation. They didn't have wives henpecking them or draining their resources. They were focused entirely on the mission and the brotherhood.
So the Templar model is about gaining power through withdrawal.
Precisely. And looking forward, Riker sees a future where this becomes easier. He talks about the New Jerusalem and the role of the singularity.
This is the sci-fi part of the book, but it feels closer every single day. The role of AI.
Riker argues that the singularity, the rise of superintelligent AI, heavily favors men.
Why is that?
Because AI operates on logic. It operates on objective functions. You cannot manipulate an AI with a sob story. You cannot shit test an algorithm. AI is immune to emotional manipulation.
That is a really interesting point. The tools of the gynocentric gulag just do not work on machines.
And he cites a study from the University of Osaka to back this up. It showed that men are increasingly satisfying emotional needs through AI rather than human relationships.
Because the AI is polite.
Because the AI is not transactional in the way modern relationships have become. It doesn't judge you. It doesn't compare you to your brother-in-law. Riker sees a future where men simply opt out of the human mating market because the AI alternative offers companionship without the knife in the back.
That leads to the final pillar of the solution: parallel institutions.
This is critical. Riker says we cannot reform the old institutions. The universities are gone, and Shar is gone. Even the church, in his view, is largely captured.
So we don't try to take them back. We don't try to vote our way out of this.
No. You let them rot. You build male-only spaces, physical and digital, that exclude the taint of feminization. You build the New Jerusalem outside the walls of the old city.
You outcompete them.
You outcompete them completely.
Yeah.
You build networks of competence, powered by Bitcoin, protected by encryption, and fueled by men who have reclaimed their logos.
Reclaiming the logos. That brings us right back to the start, the return to reason.
It does. The book ends with the call to pick up the sword of truth, to stop apologizing for being rational, to stop apologizing for demanding evidence over feelings.
Riker's final provocation really sticks with me. He says, the provider's paradox is simple. The more you build, the more you are resented. The only winning move is to stop playing by their rules.
It's a call to total sovereignty. You are the host, they are the parasites, act accordingly.
That is the bottom line right there. You are the host, act accordingly.
It is a powerful message for anyone in this space.
Look, we've covered a huge amount of ground today. We've talked about the biological hardware, the economic extraction, the legal traps, and the exit strategies. But like I said at the very beginning, we are only scratching the surface here.
There is so much more in the book. The specific legal citations, the deep historical analysis of the Men Camp narrative, and the detailed fortress construction tactics.
So here is your marching order.
Oh.
If you want the full manual, the full red pill download, you need to buy the book. Go to Amazon Kindle or Google Play Books right now. Search for Tooth and Claw, Men Must Produce, Sacrifice, and Fight by Conrad Riker. Buy it, read it, highlight it.
And don't just read it. Connect with the ongoing battle. Riker is active on Substack. You need to follow him at Conrad Riker. That is where the community is building the New Jerusalem.
Do not let this just be another deep dive you listen to while driving. Take action. Go to Amazon Kindle or Google Play Books. Get the book. follow the Substack. And finally, if you want us to keep bringing you these deep dives, to keep fighting the gynocentric silence, you need to like and subscribe to this channel. Help the algorithm find the men who desperately need to hear this.
The war on your joy ends now, but only if you choose to end it.
I'm going to leave you with a final thought to mull over. If the system relies entirely on your labor to function, what happens the day the sleeper decides not just to wake up, but to walk away entirely? The power has always been in your hands. You are the host. They are the parasites. Act accordingly. Thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive. We'll see you next time.